1, 2, 3. 1, 2,
Cool. All
3.
right. Everybody's evenly matched. So let me just do a quick little final check on something, and then we'll be off to the races. So who would do you, so technically the affirmative in this case would be our friends on the left, and then our friends on the right would be going second. So everybody cool with that?
The topic is, are DEI hires real? Correct?
Yep.
Yeah, I
And
think
they're
so.
going to say no, and we're going to say yes. That's
Oh, you're right.
More or
I'm
less, I
sorry.
so
guess.
we would be affirmative. I think would
You're
be the
right.
yes.
Okay.
I don't care the order. It makes no difference to me. But however you guys want to do, it's
Yeah,
cool with me.
I don't care. I did have a presentation, but my computer's acting up, so I don't know how I'm going to do that other than shining my phone on my computer.
You
I
got
have
it.
such a ghetto setup right now.
No problem. What we're
You
gonna
got
do
ghetto setup
is,
live. I like that. I like that ghetto setup live.
we'll have Alex go first, and then you can kick it over to Rob, Alex, once you're done. So it's about 6 minutes per person. And then once you're done, Rob, I will kick it over to the other team. Who would like to go first between the two of you, Corbin and Garrett?
Garrett's probably got the more thorough opener. Mine
Cool.
probably
Yeah.
won't
Garrett.
need the full 6 minutes.
We'll have Garrett go first then.
All right.
And I'm going to start the stream. They won't hear us yet. This is just to make sure the connection is good, which it should be. And then we'll be off to the races.
Give me 3 seconds. Use the restroom. I'll be like 30 seconds. I promise.
That's cool. I go pee a lot. I might have to go pee during the debate. I apologize. I pre-apologize for that.
Too much beer today, or
No, I don't even drink beer like that. I'm just having a lot of Fanta Zero Sugar, if we're being honest. I do. I drink a lot of this. And I don't know if this one has
I'm not
caffeine.
surprised. I dig it. I got my full ass.
I know, and
thing here.
that's one of my things. I don't drink enough water. I definitely don't.
Yeah.
James probably drinks a lot of water. James is a health nut. James, you're on that water kick.
And
You a
I
health nut,
do
James?
drink
Well,
too much.
James
Too much
James
water.
lifts a lot of weights. Like he's buff, so
fuck
he
yeah.
needs to drink a lot of water.
I do
Oh,
love
yeah.
to lift weights. It's very fun. And yeah, I lead a very boring life. But they're gonna but this part's not boring. This part is the best part. It's the most
Yeah,
fun.
absolutely.
Oh
I'm gonna jump in.
yeah,
We're gonna this ship is taking off. What thanks
James.
for
I just
being
want
here,
to say
guys.
that I've been a fan of your channel for over 5 years. I've watched almost every debate.
Thanks, brother.
I love your channel. I love it.
That means thank you. That means a lot. Seriously.
Well,
Thank
All right, I
you.
let's
love
be
you.
And
real.
We're
Wait, time out. Time out. TV time out.
Uh,
Garrett, have you ever been to one of the debate events, though? How big of a fan are you? Have you been to a live event? That's the
well,
real time.
that's because I have
uh,
kids and they're little.
I know it
So
is harder. I know it is harder, but you watch every
No,
one.
Alex. No, Alex. He's making excuses.
mm.
Don't let him get away with
those
that.
are
He's not a real
excuses.
fan.
You know, James, I like the original name of your channel better, Modern Day Hysteria. I kind of
wow.
wish you had kept that.
You have been watching a long time. Okay. If you remember that, that's funny. But we're all right. Well, we're gonna jump into this. Thank you though. That means more than you know. Thank you for saying that. Thank you guys for being here.
Yeah.
If you have any links that you'd
Absolutely.
like me to add to the description box, I think one of you already sent it. And then Alex and Rob, I know what your guys is because you've been on before, but I will add those to the description box. Thank you
I
guys for
think I
being
think I
here.
sent you on
And
YouTube.
here we go. And what I'm going to first do is this little ad is going to play for DebateCon 6. I'm going to start that right now. Here I go.
All right.
God, my camera is
Okay,
being
so
so glitchy.
that ad is playing right now. It takes about 15 more seconds. And then I will go on and I will say, hey, everybody, today we're debating whether or not DEI hires are real. And by DEI hires, I think we all agree that in this context, it would mean person who's getting hired for diversity reasons when there's someone else that would have been more qualified for the job. So for those purposes, using that definition, here I go. 3, 2, 1, ready, set. Hey, everybody. Today we're debating whether or not DEI hires are real, and we are starting right now with the affirmative side, in particular, Alex Stein. Thank you very much for being with us. The floor is all yours.
It's prime time now. Pimp, thank you for having me. I feel like my webcam though is being all glitchy. Like I don't know why it's acting like this. Hold on, let me see if I know I love how we start the show, and then I immediately have to see if it's. Hold on, let me see this. Let me see this.
It's the deep state. Okay, they don't want you.
Is it?
Been
Is
going
it
on those
glitchy?
Yeah.
websites I told you not to go
Okay,
on.
maybe
All
it's
right.
a little. maybe it's a little better.
I contacted the deep state and told them to interfere with you.
Yeah.
Well, the deep
Netanyahu,
state's
leave us
real.
alone.
The deep state
we're-
is real. The deep state is real, but we'll get into that. So, guys, thank you for having me. Rob, is a seasoned debater. Garet, Corbin. Once again, I really appreciate you coming here and basically being prey to Rob and I's predator, because really and truly, this subject is impossible for you to debate against it. Because even if you're in favor of DEI, you have to admit that it is real and that we don't have a meritocracy if we have a system that changes the rules for different genders and races. And I think that there's obvious examples. I think the first example that comes to mind for me personally is I think about the police force. I think about the fire department. I think about these jobs that are so important. But when it comes to law enforcement and catching a criminal, a woman cannot pass the standard physical fitness test that a man has to go through. And so what do? They literally change the test requirements in order to help another gender so that they can include more women. So obviously we know it's real, and that happens. There's women that get jobs over male police officers because they are a woman, but when it comes to physical capabilities, they would admit that they are inferior. So right there and then when it comes to the police force, same thing when it goes to the fire department, and when it comes to the basic requirements and the tests that are required physically, the physical fitness tests required to be a firefighter, these tests are made easier for women. So right then and there, your argument is just dead in the water. Now, the most glaring example of this, and a person that I'm almost even envious of because they were able to have so much success with such little talent, and anybody, should be envious of this woman, that's Kamala Harris, because she is so untalented and so unlikable. And even Joe Biden, the auto-pin president that didn't make one decision for himself his entire presidency other than what flavor of ice cream to eat, said, I need to pick a woman, a black woman. I mean, he said this. He said that he needed to check boxes. So that means every eligible person that had worked hard, like a white man or even a Jewish man, for that example, and I hope neither of you are anti-Semitic, because I know Rob and we love Israel so much, and they're paying me $7,000 to say this, but I still love them so much, and I think they should know that they're the greatest country. My point is, you don't want to be considered anti-Semitic, so why does a woman, a black woman, get to supersede every other gender? Every male would be excluded from the role of Vice President of the United States. Every person that is not a Filipino, blackish type person. I don't even know what her race is. Her mom, there's pictures of her, she has kind of a red thing on her head. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's kind of cool. I like their food. I like their curry food. I don't like when they're cooking it with their feet. But what I'm saying is that's different strokes for different folks. I'm not against that culture. I just don't know if she's black or white, and either do you. And that is why she got chosen. It's because she's what is called ethnically ambiguous, and that is what they like. And you can even look at it and how our DEI is really infected. And Rob's going to talk more about probably the political side. We can talk about pilots. Obviously, there's requirements for pilots. But where really DEI has made a huge stink is in Hollywood. I mean, every single freaking time they make a new remake of a movie, they got to turn damn Snow White into black, Aunt Jemima Snow White. And not that there's anything wrong with that. I kind of like a little sass and flair. But, they're literally changing history by blackifying or, gaying up, So people in Hollywood, if you're a white actor, you're not even eligible for traditional roles anymore because of DEI. So that's not because you're the better actress. So people, because of their skin color and because they're marginalized, which we all want to help marginalized people, even though you guys might say, oh, you're right, you're conservative. I don't want to, get rid of all social services. I want to help people, but I don't want to get people addicted to a welfare system that encourages them to stay on the system. And I think that's what's happened, with our government getting so involved with, African Americans and the level of success that they're having. But that's a different debate for a different day. My point, when it comes to DEI, yes, there are people that are marginalized, whether you want to admit that or not, that people are trying to help them out. But where it affects people is when you have serious jobs like doctors, pilots, politicians, some of the most influential jobs in the world. When we take out the meritocracy in those roles and we give it to people based on their gender or because of the color of their skin, we know it's real. We've seen concrete examples of that, but that is why we're frustrated. It's not about being racist. And if we want to help marginalized people, there's ways to help them in other industries. So it's not even like when we say is DEI real, we know that it's real within the government. We know that it's real within corporations. We know that it's real within the public school system, within the private school system. So we know that it is real. Is it effective? I don't know. I don't think it is an effective system. But once again, we need to lift up marginalized people by not screwing over the people that deserve it the most, because those are the people that really get screwed over. And it's kind of like, at the end of the day, I'm not saying I'm some racist. I feel like it's hard to make this argument without seeming like I don't want to help black people, because I do want to help black people, but I don't want them to have to be held to a lower standard than everybody else. And that is a clear example when it comes to colleges and acceptance rates. And that's why people like Mindy Kaling's brother, who's Indian, lied and said that he's black because it would make it easier to get into college. So that's real. And those are real stats. But I don't want my surgeon, LaShonda, to get into medical school because her mom was a crackhead and she's got a good backstory. And yes, I love LaShonda. I want LaShonda to be successful. I'll follow her on TikTok. I don't want her to be my surgeon. So once again, I say that all with, I love every color. I love LaShonda, but we should all have to follow the same two-tier justice system that really and truly our judicial system is one of the worst when it comes to DEI, because if you're an African-American in New York, you can get released without a bond whatsoever. But if you're a tax-paying citizen, they're going to hold you to a higher standard because they know that they can get money from you. So they're going to make you use a bail bonds, and they're going to put you through a lot of different hoops than they do in New York when it comes to their no bail system, which is also in Los Angeles, and that was meant to help black people. So what I'm saying is this DEI stuff, letting people out of jail that are serious criminals, a guy that's been arrested 40 times, and that's why he stabs a Ukrainian refugee, and I'm sure you guys love Ukraine, on a whatever, subway, whatever it was, or a bus, that happens because of DEI. So we need to hold people to a higher standard, the same standard, and even the playing field for everybody. And DEI is real, and that's the opening statement.
Can't hear you, James. Is it just me? I assume you said, Rob, go ahead and go. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Yeah.
Okay.
The floor is all yours.
So apologies, having a bit of a boomer moment here. For some reason, Zoom screws up my computer and sometimes it crashes out. If so, I'll be right back. I promise. Yes. First, I would be remiss if I didn't say, please, everyone, get your DebateCon tickets. I look forward to being there. My lovely wife will be there. There's going to be a phenomenal lineup of people there. It's going to be not only the premier debate event, but it's also going to be quite the social event to be at as well. So really, thank you, James, for putting that on. I can't wait to be there and meet everyone again. So thank you for having me here. Thank you to Garet, Corbin, and of course, the Pimple on the Blimp Prime Time. Always on the grind, Alex Stein. Always a pleasure to do anything, debate or otherwise, with Alex. So happy to be here. Now, the problem that my opponents are going to have, despite my crazy rough day where I was incapable of preparing much, is this is quite a simple debate for Alex and me to have, and it's admirable for them to take a position that is going to be nigh on indefensible, which is this is not an ought statement. So it is not should DEI occur. It is an is statement. And the question is, are there DEI hires? And the answer is most certainly, undoubtedly, yes. There are DEI hires. Now, I could go through, and we will, if you want, a litany of organizations that have proudly promoted the idea that they want to have DEI programs, DEI hires, racial quotas, quotas for LGBT people, quotas for people of religious denominations, quota for people based on gender, sex, etc. All of these are real. This goes from everywhere from companies like Microsoft to Meta, which was formerly Facebook, to Google, to airlines, and a bunch of other places. We could also, depending on how we define the term hire, could see that this would be used in things like admissions in universities, where we've had places like Harvard that actually lost lawsuits showing that they prioritize people of certain races and in effect was having DEI in admission standards. And certainly we can see that the same is true in politics. And it's not just limited to the Democratic Party, by the way. The most prime example of probably the most unqualified DEI recipient at the highest position possible would be Ketanji Brown Jackson, who is such a disaster as a Supreme Court justice. Even fellow left-wingers on the court are often quite snide in their rebuke of her in their commentary, even if they end up being on the same side of the issue. She would be the preeminent understanding of what a DEI hire is, as Joe Biden admitted that he was looking to hire a woman of color for that position. Now, the problem with DEI is going to be that it's going to artificially limit the pool of people. It's not necessarily about what the exact race, what the exact sexual orientation, gender, etc. of the group that you're preferencing is. That's not going to be relevant. There's a question to be had about those sort of things, but it would be relevant as to whether or not that's important about shrinking the pool of people that would be most qualified for any position. If I'm looking for 1,000 people at my company and I artificially limit myself to wanting to prioritize factors that don't have to do with ability, what will happen is necessarily, although I might get people that are eminently qualified that do meet that diversity quota that I was trying to engage in, the problem is I'm going to have to fill in the bottom of that with people that wouldn't be as qualified as other people. For example, let's say that of pilots, the top 997 candidates for a particular company, the literal top skilled 997 of them would be Black women. Okay, great. What about the remaining 3? Well, if you set a quota that you need 1,000 Black pilots, even if the vast majority of them 997, would be eminently qualified, the problem would be you've artificially limited yourself to ensuring that there would be 3 that wouldn't be as qualified. And that is the way things exist. Now, I can get into the details of this and talk specifically about these companies, and perhaps that's where we'll go. Oftentimes, this is something that happens frequently. There's a yelling of source, please, and we could get into that. But I'll also be able to argue how we all know that this is true, as I'll get to in a second. Now, seeing as how I'm able to prove that this does exist, and again, I've already listed places that have racial quotas that said that they prioritize having people of certain races. There's also anecdotal stories that even without the source, all of us know someone who's been involved in a company that's able to say, I sat in a company meeting and they said that 70% of the people put in leadership positions in the next 2 years need to be women of color, need to be people in the LGBT, et cetera, et cetera. All of this is true, and what we'll see is usually what happens with people that come from the Democratic side of things or the left-wing side of things, they'll deny that reality and yell source. We could see this when it came to Joe Biden's cognitive decline. If they're willing to lie about something so obvious, then clearly they'd be willing to misrepresent the facts about DEI hires. And in fact, they did this quite frequently when it came to things like critical race theory. They told us that this wasn't being taught at schools, even though we could all see that it was blatantly occurring. But I anticipate and I'll prioritize making this argument because I don't really have to go any further with an offensive argument to say what my opponent's strategy will be. I believe that our opponents will try to argue a unique definition of DEI that's not diversity, equity, or inclusion, and they'll try to say something to the effect of just because a company would have a racial quota doesn't mean that the people they're hiring aren't qualified or as qualified as other people. And then in fact, we've had a systemically racist society, which means that we have artificially had a DEI for white people. And now we're just solving that situation. So when you could point to all of these companies that their recent hiring trends have been overwhelmingly people that aren't white men and meet these diversity quotas that they're talking about, they'll say that that's just a return to equilibrium. But that's not the case. Even if it was true that in the past there was artificial enhancement of people that happen to be white men, which I don't think is the case, at least going back in my lifetime. But even if that was true, that would not justify restricting your hiring now in order to have people that come from these certain categories of immutable characteristics, such as race, sex, sexual orientation, etc. The idea that you would prioritize people from even the lowest level job at a job like fast food, which, by the way, I won't shit on any job. If you're out there and you're working in today's day and age, you deserve to be celebrated because so many people want to cop out and take the easy way out. But there are certainly jobs that we would say would be more important in the context of people's lives are at stake. My partner, Alex Stein, talks specifically about firefighters. Famously, there was an incident during the Palisades fires where one of the women that was in a position of leadership at one of those fire departments famously was on camera saying, if you find yourself being a heavy man and I can't drag you out of a fire, you should ask yourself how you got in that situation. That's horrific. These are jobs that we have certain demands that need to be met because people's lives are on the line. And the fact that we prioritize immutable characteristics like the biological sex that you were born with is absolutely disturbing. And quite frankly, we're getting exacerbated with these actions occurring and with the denial of them as they're saying. So I predict that that's what my opponents will do. Last thing I'll say is why it's a bad thing. I don't really want to get into conversations of people, whether they're better or not based on race. I think it's easier to do so based on sex. Men tend to be physically stronger. And for jobs that require physical characteristics, it seems intuitive that a man would be better suited for that job. However, there are jobs that it tends to be temperamentally, and even with the skill set that's normally in the defined sexual roles, that women tend to be better in. You see this in jobs that sort of prioritize working with people as opposed to working with things. That seems to be the big bifurcation in men versus women. So I don't really want to get into that as much as to say that the artificial limiting of the pool of people will mean that you make this a worse situation. But it is inevitable that we'll be able to win, that yes, it is occurring and it shouldn't be. So I'm sure we'll get from our opponents, it doesn't happen, but if it does, it's good. That's it. That's my opening statement.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for that opening statement. Folks, if it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, I'm your host, Dr. James Coons. We are a fully neutral debate platform hosting debates on science, religion, and politics. We hope you feel welcome no matter what walk of life you're from. And if you have been living in a cave on Mars with your fingers in your ears and you didn't know about DebateCon 6, it's happening in Nashville, Tennessee, November 15th and 16th. As you can see at the bottom right of your screen, that little promo card shows just some of the debaters that are going to be there. I am linking the tickets link in the chat right now. Get your tickets, as we're expecting it to sell out. Not only do you get to see debaters debate, but you also get to meet them in person, shake their hands, say hello, and also meet a lot of people just like you who enjoy these topics. With that, we're going to flip it over. OBS disconnected. We might be in trouble. Let's see. The stream should connect back. 2 seconds.
Damn, I'm having all...
Here we go. Thank you very much for your patience, folks. We had a little bit of a lapse in OBS there. What I was saying is we are back to the original stream. It reconnected at the right page. So we got lucky there. But folks, grab your tickets at the link in the description box, because you may not be so lucky when it comes to getting your tickets, as they may sell out. With that, thank you very much, gentlemen. We're going to kick it over to Corbin and Garet. Garet, the floor is all yours. Let me just make sure you're unmuted. There you go. I just unmuted you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. I apologize for how kind of janky this presentation is going to be. I'm just going to flip this sideways. Can you confirm that you can see my screen, please?
You got to turn your camera sideways, I think.
You got to turn it. I don't think
like
people are going to be able to see it. If you want to do it.
Well, if you turn your phone sideways, no, turn your phone sideways.
I did turn my phone sideways.
Well, do you have it not on anti-rotate?
Again.
Okay. It isn't. I think
I
I'm
like
gonna have
this
to skip the
boomer stuff.
presentation.
No, I like this. It's unhinged. I really like this.
It's unhinged.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go through my spiel and just trying to. So according to a study completed by the McKinsey Company, they interviewed 107 companies in the United Kingdom. They were surveyed, and their conclusion was they saw average EBIT. For anyone who doesn't know, that means earnings before interest and taxation. They saw an EBIT increase of 3.5% for every 10% increase in gender diversity in the senior executive team. So there is absolutely a profit incentive, a revenue incentive, market share incentive for companies, thousands of them around the world, to have a diverse executive teams. And of course, that tends to trickle on downwards. I know the company I work for has like diversity policies in effect. Now, I will say one thing I am confused about that I want to ask my opponents about is, don't people still have to go through the interview process? So, and also the whole point of DEI is to broaden the talent pool, broaden the pool of applicants, not decrease it. And then with that broader pool, they go through the interview process. Now, DEI research, it strongly indicates diverse teams are smarter and teammates are better at challenging each other. Example scenarios range from juries to scientists, and it results in a significantly better focus on the facts while being less prone to errors in comparison to homogenous, like all white teams. Example, pretend you've been paired up with an African American to work on a project compared to being matched with a Caucasian American. Some might say it would not change their behavior, but this would result in subconscious behavior modifications. It's certainly the whole point. Exposure to other races and ethnicities challenges our biases, critical thinking processes, and has better financial results combined with improved productivity, performance, promotions, bonuses, employee SAT survey scores. Now, in the United States, companies with at least a 22% diverse executive senior leadership team, it results in higher revenue. That's more GDP, that's more people spending more money in the economy. The DEI benefits drills down from the top, and it works best when the efforts and initiatives are not forced. It has to be voluntary. That's very key. Now, that includes the hiring practices and training. Forcing DEI hiring practices results in poor hiring decisions and bias towards minority groups. Companies should be going through it on a voluntary basis only because of that increase in bias otherwise. Companies with insufficient DEI hiring practices, it results in lower satisfaction scores in employee surveys. DEI hiring policies, it does cause social friction, 100%. You might view this, some might view this as painful, uncomfortable, and annoying. But you know what else can be viewed as painful, uncomfortable, and annoying? Lifting weights. James knows all about it. But when you're done, you are better for it. The benefits of exercise is demonstrable, and so are the benefits of DEI hiring policies. Pew Research studies indicated a large number of respondents, 53% in surveys, say DEI hiring policies is important and has positive results in their workplace. Now, there are some important takeaways and recommendations here. A range of beneficial financial impacts, innovation, that's very key, and decision-making. But the efforts in DEI, again, they must be voluntary while avoiding any skin-deep diversity without the substance or, if you prefer, weak sauce commitments. If companies want increases in revenue, innovation, and market share, then they'll implement DEI hiring policies. Thousands of companies around the world are already doing this. Now, the conclusion, pretend you're the CEO of one of the 1,500 companies on the S&P, but you haven't implemented any of these hiring policies. Would you want more growth, revenue, market share, and employee satisfaction? I'm sure you would. It just makes sense. Now, again, the key is to have voluntary and also to not limit the pool of applicants, keep it broad, and make sure everyone goes through the interview process. That way you weed them out, the ones that are terrible. And that's my opening statement. Corbin, go for it.
You should be unmuted now, Corbin.
All right, sweet. Can you hear me? All good?
Yes.
All right. What are DEI hires? DEI hires tend to be obviously diversity, equity, inclusion, but for the sake of this debate, we're treating it as people who are unqualified being put into positions of whatever occupancy or power that they don't deserve. From that perspective, I can agree DEI hires are bad. I think any normal person would. But what most people, at least in the Democratic base, tend to think of DEI hires as are people who are already qualified, maybe being given slight preferential treatment because of the color of their skin, their ethnic background, their gender, simply to increase diversity for the virtue of diversity. I do acknowledge there are, of course, problems with hiring people unqualified. I think Rob had brought up Harvard earlier. There were issues related to that where people who weren't necessarily super qualified or the most qualified to get into the school were having their applications accepted at a rate disproportionate to the amount of people in their ethnic group that were actually deserving or qualified to get into those schools. But I guess my ultimate position will be, I don't think that it's as much of an issue that the right seems to think it is. When we start blaming DEI for hiring processes that lead to huge disasters, like with the FAA or the DOT, where we try to paint we try to paint these organizations federally and state and local as pushing a diversity agenda in order to fill these racial or ethnic quotas, when in reality most places don't tend to do that. Most places don't tend to hire unqualified people based on some sort of racial or ethnic diversity. I think a lot of the outrage coming from the right is often played up or inflamed than what the actual reality of the situation is. And that'll be all.
Thank you very much for that opening. All right, folks, what we're going to do here is jump into the open dialogue. I've got to let you know, folks, we're only going to have a relatively short open dialogue of about 55 minutes, and then we're going to have a short Q&A. So if you happen to have questions, submit them in the live chat. And with that, we're going to jump into it. Thank you very much, gentlemen. The floor is all yours.
Mr.
All right,
Mr.
Alex.
Stein, can I say something real quick? You are aware that both of you conceded the debate, right? In your opening statements, you both admitted that.
Yeah, it's kind of
that.
hard. Well, the prompt is very absolute. It's kind of hard to defend it in and of itself, right? Like,
So
all
just
you need
because
is one,
I have no
well,
problem.
all you need is one single example. Like,
Okay,
to
I
there's
have
multiple.
no
debate. That's
and I don't mind debating this topic, like
so-
understanding that it is real. You know, I don't mind debating it.
Yes, I'm willing to go further. I just want both of you to acknowledge that as to the topic as written, are DEI hires real? Corbin, you acknowledge that that's the case in a litany of factors. You just say that it's blown out of proportion. Garrett gave an
basically.
entire opening statement saying, of course DEI hires are real and all these companies do it and it's a good thing. But both of you are saying that they're real. So you'll both concede that we win the prompt as written, correct?
Yeah, I don't know how
reason-
much. Well, so I don't know how much like stake I have in defending that prompt. Like, I don't know how much like value you would honestly get out of winning it, because it's, like I said, it's a very
Baby, winning's
absolute
winning.
question.
Well, how about this?
Well, I mean, it's an
Winning's
absolute
Corbin,
question.
hold-
like,
hold-
Hold up
let's-
for a second.
Well, let's
Hold up for a
quantify it.
second.
I guess maybe we could kind of change. I guess if we know it is real, and you know, you guys think it is a good thing, but I guess can we quantify
I never
how?
said it was
Can you hear me? Or
never said
how
it was
bad? What?
I never said it was a good thing. Just that the specifically people of unqualified backgrounds being pushed into positions that they're not qualified to occupy. That doesn't happen on a
No,
broad
don't
level.
concede
think-
too fast. Garrett's not going to concede because his argument, correct me if I'm wrong, Garrett, is going to be the following. Well, actually, if we can say that there's a profit incentive for companies doing DEI, then it's not as if DEI is hiring people that are unqualified, even if it appears as such on the resume, because there would be an incentive for companies to do this, which would make those people more qualified because at the end, they anticipate they would make them more money. Correct, Garrett?
Not exactly. So
okay.
let me clarify. I would like to clarify, and I do have some questions for Alex also that I would love to get to. So first, the clarification. There's still that interview process, and the whole point of DEI hiring policies is to broaden the pool of applicants, not to shrink it.
That's untrue.
I mean, that's the stated goal.
That's
of
not
DEI
true.
hiring
For example,
policy.
I could point to...
you know, real quick, you know about the H-1B1 visa scam where people were, companies were posting jobs online meeting the requirements for them to be able to qualify for visas for H-1Bs, and they were literally posting the jobs knowing that nobody would see them. So you know that they do subversive things like that in order to benefit the companies, right? You agree to that?
I haven't heard that, actually. I wasn't aware of that. I apologize.
So, for example,
No,
let me
I
give you a
haven't heard
couple
that.
examples.
Ghost
That
jobs. They're called ghost
actually
jobs.
didn't
You can
come
look it up.
in
Where companies...
That actually didn't even come up in the research that I was doing
Oh,
on like the positives and negatives of DEI hiring policies. So for me, to me, the whole point of it is to make the talent pool bigger, not smaller. And if you're
That's
including more people, then by definition, it would be bigger.
That's not true. That's actually the inverse of the truth. And let me explain why.
Well, they still have to go through the interview process.
It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. If you limit yourself by saying, we want a black person for this job, you're right. The black person still has to go through the interview interview process, but you've artificially limited the pool of people to only black people necessary for that job. So, for example, United Airlines CEO Scott Kirby confirmed that they are looking for 50% of their trainees to be women or people of color, right? Now, that would mean that at least 50% of them have to be from those groups, which would mean if the first 50% of the people they get don't fit those qualifications, they now have to limit the further applicants that they have for that to people that are specifically people of color or women. Now, the only way that that already proves that you're wrong, but the only potential way that you could get out of that would be to somehow say that previous to that, they were unwilling to look at women or people of color. Now, do you think for a second that United Airlines is going to admit that? Do you think that was actually the case of what was going on? Of course not. I'll answer that for you. And what we can see is, and I can tell you.
I will also say, though, that the physical requirements for women in the airline industry in terms of being pilots, the standards are the same, whether it's men or women.
That may be true, right? But what happens is when you artificially, like, it doesn't have to be just physical standards. There are certainly cases that Alex and me will be able to win. Alex has already said law enforcement, where they do lower the standards for women, for example. But it's irrelevant if the standards.
He's right. It's irrelevant if the standards are lower. If a woman gets hired over a more qualified male just because they met the minimum requirements.
So, for example, they lower the standards when it comes to firefighters in many precincts by saying they don't have to do as many physical requirements like pull-ups, be able to carry as much equipment, etc. Those are physical standards.
Law enforcement.
There are law enforcement.
How are they?
There are law enforcement agencies that are having equal standards across the board.
There are some, but there have been examples where that's not the case. For example, there might be a certain obstacle course or something like that you need to complete in a certain time in order to pass the test.
So Rob, is it primarily like physical?
In those instances,
yes. Okay, but I don't necessarily know if I would call that DEI hiring, because there are other elements to being a police other than physicality, right? Like you can be qualified.
I have to cut you off though, Corbin. I have to cut you off. It is obviously DEI because it is a woman that qualifies for the lower standard. So it is the most glaring example of DEI.
Hold on. The lowered standard is that it's physicality. That's just the nature. That's just human nature.
That is human nature. That is human nature. And I get it. They can't jump across a wall as fast as a guy.
The argument is that there are other ways that men and women can be equal beyond just physicality.
That's true.
And there's more to police work.
Okay, but may I respond? May I respond to this, right? Would you admit that the reason that there are physical fitness standards in a job like being a firefighter is because there is a minimal physical standard that they think would be necessary to successfully complete the job?
Yeah, sure, but we're talking about law enforcement.
Okay, right? Well, let's stick with firefighter for a second because I'm more aware of these.
We started with law enforcement.
Okay, would you admit that that's the case with law enforcement?
Would I admit that what's the case with law enforcement?
The reason that there are physical standards for things like law enforcement in the first place is because the idea is you need to be able to meet this minimal physical standard in order to do the job that's asked of you.
Sometimes, no. In some regards, but like even women firefighters still have physical standards they have to meet.
Right, but if the argument is that we've accepted that there's a bare minimum standard that you need to pass in order to qualify for this job, and then we lower that standard.
Let me finish, please.
I promise I'll leave you talk unfettered. I totally promise. Right? When you lower that standard, right, and say the reason we are lowering that standard is because we want a diverse, equitable, inclusive hiring policy. What that means is you have necessarily lowered. You're absolutely right. When we take any qualification for any job whatsoever, you can make an argument that the minimal qualifications you have there can be superseded in other aspects by an individual. For example, it's hypothetical that there's a 10-year-old out there that's more qualified at coding than someone for a job that requires a bachelor degree in coding. And yet the hiring practices set that standard because that's what they've agreed on is the minimum standard that they would like for that job. In order to just say, well, but those minimal standards can often be malleable and we don't consider it a DEI hire if someone doesn't meet those standards, so they artificially lower it if it's something like they're a woman, if they're a person of color, sexual orientation, etc., is nonsensical. It's nonsensical to say, well, maybe they make up for it in other aspects. A small comfort when I'm burning alive in a building and the woman can't physically get in there, but hey, she's better on the telephone than the guy.
Well, so specifically, specifically, my argument with law enforcement is that there's other means to conduct that job that go beyond just physicality, to where men and women can more or less have the same results when they're doing the job, right? Like
there are some aspects of police work.
Hold on.
We agree to that.
We use firearms, we use pepper spray, we use tasers, right? Like there are other ways to combat an individual, a criminal, that physically than just using like physical force.
Right. And do you know?
Yes,
do you know
but women always grab their gun and shoot the guy when all he has is a damn cell phone in his hand. They think it's a gun. There's all these instances.
Well, I want to hear. Sorry, Garrett, were you speaking?
Do you know what the actual difference is in terms of the standards between men and women for law enforcement?
No, it would be different. It would be different from, it would be different from agency to agency. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure it's like on average.
Is it push-ups? Is it like running speed? Is it running distance?
It's all of that. It's calisthenics. It's we know that it exists. But do you know?
No, hold on.
Do I know the specifics now?
Okay, so if we don't even know what the specifics are, then why are we talking about it?
We don't need to know the specifics to know that they're real. We can look up the specifics.
I think knowing what the specifics are would be valuable.
It's like,
hold on one sec.
We know the score of the game. I mean, we already know the outcome. So really, the specifics, you know that they exist. So if it's 20 push-ups or it's 2,000 push-ups, it doesn't matter.
It does matter because there's a lot of men who can't do 2,000 push-ups, but most men can do 20 push-ups.
It's not about the number of push-ups. It's about that they're held to a lower standard. No, just
I do want to be sure. I do want to be sure.
Right, but I want.
Hold on one second. I just want to be sure that Gary gets to finish his sentence there.
So I was just wondering what the difference is. Like if you know what the difference is, if you're able to quantify that, then I think that would be valuable to add to the conversation. If we don't know what it is, I think we should just move on.
I'll look it up. I'll look it up right now. So we can know.
Folks, while Alex is looking that up, I do want to say, if you didn't know, we do have channel memberships. As you can see, the bottom right of your screen, only playlists. If you sign up at the debater level, you get access to those over 350 debates. Some of our most juicy, including
James, you're kind of
folks like Stefan Molyneux.
Phasing in and out of reality on my end. That's just me.
Yeah, same. I agree.
Okay. Your audio is kind of peaking there, James, and it looks like you may have disappeared. I will continue on. Yeah.
Well, so Rob, do you?
No, wait a second. Let's be fair. Like, we asked a question. I looked up the data that was looking. One, this specific data is irrelevant. You would both concede that there are individual police forces that have lower standards. Regardless of what those lower standards are, it would meet the qualifications of what we're talking about is hiring someone for a reason that's not ability. So you have a bare minimum standard. Let me finish. You have a bare minimum standard that you say is necessary to get hired for this job, and you are lowering that for reasons of diversity, equity, or inclusion. That meets my criteria. Secondly, to some specific examples, FBI, women must complete 14 push-ups versus 30 for men, 47 sit-ups versus 55 for men, and a 1.5-mile run in 13:59 versus 12:37 for men in the physical fitness test. NYPD, prior to 2023's most recent data, they used a gender norm test where women needed to use fewer reps and strength exercises, etc. California, a post-certified department, state-mandated work sample tests as adjusted standards. Women are required to do 70 to 80% of the male benchmarks. Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, gender-specific tests allow for women lower thresholds, i.e. 20 push-ups as opposed to 40, 1.5-mile run in 15:30 versus 13 minutes, etc. The list goes on and on and on and on. Normally, you're looking at about 70 to 80% of the physical abilities that are the necessary to hire men. Will you acknowledge, if that's the case, that the standards for women are lowered in these specific law enforcement areas, that is in effect a DEI hire, and secondly, that would be dangerous because we set those low minimal standards because we expect some level of physical fitness to be a default in order to accomplish the job of proficient law enforcement?
I have another question first before I answer yes or no.
But again, you can execute the job without having to meet those without having to be as physically demanding or as physically fit as a man, right?
No, that's not true. We set bare minimum standards.
I'm saying, Corbin, there's some aspects. Let's just agree to this.
Corbin, there are ways that
we're arguing semantics.
Law against criminals other than just physical
Corbin, can you hear me, Corbin? Or do you just talk over me? I'm saying, let's just say, when it comes to female law enforcement, because I don't...
What? For crying out loud, Corbin, when he's talking, let him finish his sentence, please.
Okay, Corbin, let's just agree. And when it comes to law enforcement, yes, like there are some women that can be detectives. There's some law enforcement aspects where women can do it. But we're talking about DEI. They're held to a lower standard, making it easier for them to get in. So there's men that would actually probably be better police officers that can't pass a test, that can't get in. But the women can. So what I'm saying is they're changing the rules. So yes, there's aspects of police work that both men and women can do. I do agree that. I'm not saying a woman can't be a cop. I don't think they can be as good a cop. We could argue that. But I'm saying I'll concede that. But that's not the argument here. The argument is about the DEI. It's about how they change the requirements. It's not whether or not they can do the job equally.
No, I would argue that there is this idea within DEI, right? If you're bringing on people who are unqualified, theoretically, they're not going to be able to execute the job in the same way or even remotely as good as people who are actually qualified for the job, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
but first off, I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think that a DEI hire could be someone that has anything to do with the hire in the first place. For example, if me and Alex are similarly qualified for the job, but I identify as trans, I don't, but let's pretend. And they give the job to me because I'm trans. I think that also would qualify as a DEI hire. I'm willing for the sake of argument to say that we should limit the discussion to people that are less qualified. Now, the question of what is qualified and can you still be qualified if you're less qualified should be irrelevant. All that matters is that you picked someone who had less ability to complete the necessary job because you factored in something like diversity, equity, or inclusion. Now, to answer your question specifically, Corbin, presumably the reason that we have these physical fit standards is we determine that that's the level that would be necessary in order to complete the job as has been determined by the people that set these standards with law enforcement. It's the same sort of idea. I don't know if you all knew this, but you also have to take written tests on the knowledge of law. Imagine if we said, well, you could fail the written test, but you could do way more push-ups. And there's many ways to be a police officer. And so therefore that increased physical strength could mean that you could be a successful police officer. No, that's not the case. And you could quickly see how this won't make sense, Corbin, because let's say that I'm a big fat tubbo. I kind of am. And I could barely run or anything like that. Yeah, there's other ways I could be a police officer. You know, I could sit at a desk all day and do things like that. But to get hired as a beat officer, no, I would be a danger to myself, to my partner, and to the community because they would rely on me based on what the bare standard was of getting hired in this sort of job, and I'd be incapable of completing it. And so when we lower that standard, which you've already conceded, these are DEI hires. Now the question is whether or not it's a good thing. It's not, because you are lowering the standards that have been set as the minimum that would be necessary to complete this job in a safe and efficient manner. Just because someone could be stronger and not necessarily make them a good police officer doesn't matter. You need to meet the bare minimum in order to do the minimum of the job. And these women aren't cutting it if we have to lower the requirements to 70 to 80%.
What do you think
By
is the
that
most
same rationale, does that mean if there are, let's say, like, I don't like to body shame anyone, so I'm like, that's not
Shame
my goal
away,
here.
baby.
I'm not, Rob. I'm not body shaming you. First of all, like, I don't do
Rob,
that.
you're
It's
looking
cool. I was
actually
just
looking good. Rob, have you lost some weight? I feel like
I
you're
have.
looking
I
good.
have.
Rob,
Thank you.
you're
Yes,
looking
I
good.
have. Thank you so much.
Well, if that's the case, then congratulations. That's in order. But so let's assume that there are overweight police officers, regardless of the color. Why do they get to keep their job?
Well, it depends. On some agencies, that's not the case. There are certain physical fitness standards that you have to complete over and over, like on a yearly basis. Oftentimes, there are overweight police officers in departments that don't have these physical qualifications. For example, if you live in some town like Mayberry, maybe the hiring restrictions aren't as stringent as it would be if you're getting hired for the FBI or the NYPD. So in those cases, there could be overweight people. But to the effect that there could be someone that is allowed to have the job because they changed the standards because they happen to be overweight. Guess what? That also is DEI. It doesn't have to be limited to sexual orientation, biological sex, ethnicity. You could have DEI on a litany of things. Well, you both concede this. Would it be true that if you lower the standards, in other words, you have a standard of what you say, look, a body of people have came together at the NYPD, at the FBI and said, here's the minimal we need people to qualify. You have to be able to do 40 push-ups. You have to be able to run this fast. That's the minimum we need to be a safe and effective on-the-street police officer. And if we lower those standards, forget about women, forget about races, we just lower those standards for other men, that would be, quote, lowering the standards, and that would mean that those people wouldn't be as good at that job because they can't meet the minimum requirements.
Do you think that the standards?
Why don't you
for
answer
men
questions? You just constantly answer
Yeah,
with
I
other
know. You
questions.
just always ask a question.
I'll happily answer yours. Certainly.
Yeah.
Well, so like I'm trying to like formulate my thought process on what you're asking, but I have some clarifying questions. So I'm not trying to answer a question with another question. I'm trying to finish my thought process on what we are talking
We want
about.
a logger that could do 10 pull-ups. Someone can't. We say the minimum requirement is 10 pull-ups to be a logger. Alex comes in and can only do 7. They say, you know what? We like his suit. We're going to hire him anyways. Is he less qualified?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
It would be any different if the reason is not because Alex is wearing a suit, but because Alex is a woman. Wouldn't she be less qualified?
Sure.
Okay,
That's the argument.
So I'm glad that we're hitting on the qualification part. So, Rob, specifically, what do you think is the most important aspect of being a police officer? The cognitive aspect, like you brought up the written test, or is it the physicality?
Well, I want to shut this down real quick, Corbin, because I kind of agreed with you earlier, but I actually want to backtrack real quick because, first of all, men and women.
Could Rob?
No, I want to answer my thing real quick because I want to clarify something because I need.
Yeah,
to
but he asked Rob
Corbin.
the question though.
Real quick, I want to clarify something because you're about to ask some dumb. You're going to ask some dumb stuff about women.
I promise I'll answer Corbin.
Real quick, you're going to ask some dumb stuff about women cognitively the same as men. Actually, they're not, and you know how we can prove that? In chess, there's a men's and women's division. Chess is the most cognitive thing that there is. Literally, it is just a game, and they have to separate men and women. And all of the grandmaster top chess people are always men. So just look at, if we're about to get into there's women as smart as men. Yes, women can do some stuff smarter than a lot of men. You know what I'm saying? Vice versa. There's exceptions to every rule. But
yeah, I don't think there should be a separation for chess. Like,
but there is.
Disagree with
but
that.
there is, Garet.
I understand there is.
Why is there? But real quick, why is there separation? Real quick, if men and women are not different, Corbin. No, but you just right there. You don't agree with it.
Do you think we hired doctors based on different standards?
Yeah, dumbass! Real quick, we do.
Do you think we hired doctors?
Corbin,
something that is completely cognitive as a job?
Listen to me. Let me talk. Let me have the floor. Let me have the floor. Let me have the floor. Corbin, when you talk about doctors,
I look forward to not answering the question again. Go on.
When you talk about doctors, that is the biggest example of it because now we're talking about medical school. It is easier for a black woman to get into medical school than it is a Chinese person. Yes, that is a fact. You can look this up. So in that instance, DEI is actually racist, not just towards black people or white people. It's racist
towards. What does this have to do with my question?
All right, can I answer?
You're talking about doctors. How can it's easier for doctors? It's easier for a black person to get into medical school and become a doctor than me, a white guy that would have to get a higher test score on the MCAT. That would have to have a higher GPA. That's real, dude. That's 100% real. That's not a conspiracy. That there are lower requirements for different ethnicities to get into medical school. Specifically,
you brought up differences.
Corbin had a question that I think he had for Rob. I think the challenge is, Rob, could you actually refresh the audience on what Corbin's question was?
Yes, his question was, what's more important when it comes to law enforcement, cognitive ability or physical ability? Is that fair, Corbin?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. just to kind of like get at what does it mean to be qualified.
It's difficult because both of them would have to meet a minimum cognitive. For example, if you have the strongest man in the world, but he has the intelligence of, say, a 5-year-old, then even that person wouldn't be qualified. Similarly, if you had Stephen Hawkins, who might be one of the smartest people in the world, but doesn't have the physical minimal capabilities, then that also would mean that he wouldn't be qualified. So what we need is a bare minimum. I'm even willing to concede that once you meet the minimal physical standards, that cognitively having the right temperament, the right intelligence to the job may be more important. And yet that minimal physical standard is also going to be important. So your question's sort of a red herring, because if we lower that minimal physical standard that's necessary to be a polite police officer, even if you could somehow argue that the women that we're doing that for have a better cognitive temperament and intelligence, which you have no evidence that that's the case, you're just assuming, well, maybe they have higher abilities elsewhere. There's no evidence of that, but even if it was, they're still not meeting that minimal standard, which would mean they'd be less effective police officers. And you've already conceded, or at least your opponent has, in the logging example, that this would be people that are less qualified. And given the nature of the prompt, which you've already both conceded at the beginning, that there are DEI hires, now the question is, can it be a bad thing? And we're already winning that obviously it can. They are literally lowering the standards, and this is just one area of law enforcement, firefighter, physical jobs like that. I'd be happy if you concede that at least on these physical jobs that you're incorrect, and it could be dangerous. I could give you examples. I have some. If you are willing to concede that, I could happily move on to non-physical jobs and talk about why DEI is bad there as well.
No, I don't think I'm ready to concede the physicality yet. At least specifically for law enforcement, because like I said, we're arguing over what does it mean to be qualified. If the cognitive aspect, I would say, is more important than the physical. It's far more important than the physical aspect. Even if you have these like different minimal standards, right? If a woman's heightened standard is maybe meeting like a man's lowered or minimum standard, right? Under those purviews, I think I'm okay with women like maybe I'm okay with the standards being a little bit different on both sides.
Okay, let me read a quote to you from the Palisades fire, if you don't mind. LA Fire Department Assistant Chief Kristen Larson, who reportedly makes $399,000 a year and led the charge against former LAFD Chief Ralph Terrazas, accused him of ignoring complaints from women in the department, appeared in a video in which she said if someone complained about a woman firefighter's inability to carry a man out of a fire, her response would be, he got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out of a fire. Can you explain to me how even if she has somehow inexplicably the absolute perfect temperament for a firefighter, that this woman who is tasked with saving people from burning buildings is admitting, well, shit, the fact that I'm physically inferior, if I can't carry a man out, that man should ask himself as he's burning alive why he got into that position. Can you explain to me how temperament would be able to make up for that?
So did I say law enforcement or firefighter? I'm so curious. What did you think?
It doesn't matter. Okay, so let's assume that woman was a police officer saying the same thing. And?
So police officers are burning.
Yes, you are unaware of the fact that oftentimes police responders are first responders.
Respond to fires, right. And they can jump in, like run into the building and try to help people.
And not only that,
average citizens do that too. So like anybody could run into a burning building and try to get somebody out.
That's a nonsensical argument.
Well then, are female firefighters generally not able to carry large people out of buildings?
Well, the implication would be that we have a minimal physical standard to ensure that people can accomplish those tasks while under high tense pressure situations. I'm getting a bit exacerbated with sort of the way this is going. Let me finish real quick. It's a bit exacerbating because I think that we could all understand that it's this sort of, I saw someone put this meme out and it's like half of debating with the Democrats at this point is understanding when they weaponize stupidity. Like, oh, we didn't know that. Yes, if a woman's standard of what we consider the male standard for a physical minimum to accomplish the physical task for the duty has to be lowered, that would imply that there will be physical duties that they're incapable of accomplishing.
Okay, I
don't know why you all can't just concede this and say, okay, in the physical job, sure.
So maybe we're just talking past each other a little bit. Maybe it's just a fact of the matter sort of thing. So Rob, if women could meet that minimal physical standard, right? Even if maybe they don't have the same capabilities as men, you would agree that some women are able to carry large men out of buildings, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Let me be clear.
Maybe it's just like a difference in fact.
Just so we don't have ships passing, I would not consider it a DEI hire. Let's say that 10 people apply for a firefighter job, right? And literally, the person who has the best physical test scores and the best cognitive scores is a woman. That's not a DEI hire. The problem is when you lower the standards because you are prioritizing something that's not ability for the job. In this case, you're prioritizing hiring a woman, or if you're prioritizing hiring an LGBT person, or if you're prioritizing hiring a minority person. That's what makes it DEI. To say, well, isn't it true that there are black people that could do the job or there are women that could meet those standards? Yes, there are women that are fully capable of exceeding the minimal standards of physicality necessary. The problem is not those women that could achieve what's asked of the men. It's the women that they hire because they want to meet these quotas that cannot do what is the minimal standard for the men. Those are the DEI hires.
Yeah, and I already condemned those. But so I guess at some point there's going to be kind of like a threshold where women aren't able to, depending on how lower the standard is, women aren't going to be able to meet the same, or aren't going to be able to generally do the same types of physical work that men can do, right? But I think you had brought up, or maybe Garet had brought up, that in some of these cases, they're only having to do like maybe 80 to 90% of the physical training or work that men have to do in order to pass, right? If it was like 90%, or like within 95%, would you have an issue with it then?
Yes. Anytime that you're talking about lowering the standard for what was the standard that was once set forth, which was minimally acceptable in order to be able to proficiently do this job, because you're prioritizing something like race, gender, sexual orientation, etc., that is bad. That is DEI. Can you explain to me, if you had to have a first responder show up to your home, whether it be a firefighter or a police officer, and it's a life and death situation, whether it be a fire, a building collapsed on you, an armed gunman or something, and you need the best person, would you want the person who was physically and mentally the most capable person? Or would you want someone that wasn't as good, but they checked a diversity quota? Which one would you rather coming to
Yeah, of course
your
I would
home?
I would want the most maximally, I would want the person that can most maximally have the highest chance of saving my life. But if the standard is being lowered to like maybe 90-95%, right, isn't that just negligible at that point?
No, it's not negligible.
Why is it not
Well,
negligible?
that seems statistically insignificant, first of all. And yes, I also would want the most proficient, most competent.
I think I got kicked from the debate.
If I see a minority person, like woman, whoever, in that role, my assumption is not going to be that they cannot do the job.
It doesn't matter.
And I would still consider them a DEI hire because they're not white. Like, like that's the definition of a DEI hire, right? Like it's just somebody who's a minority, not necessarily somebody who was unqualified for the role.
No,
that's a conservative
specifically
definition.
for this discussion, I think we were saying that the people being hired were unqualified.
No, it's not even my argument is this. It would qualify as a DEI hire if there was a person that it was any sort of factor whatsoever that they are prioritized because of their race, gender, sexual orientation, or any of these other immutable characteristics. However, for the processes of this debate, and I think that we could say either in my definition or this secondary definition for this debate, which I'm willing to go forward with this debate, is that they are hired because of these factors and they are less qualified. Now, that's imminently true in an example where we're talking about women that are only asked to do 80%. By the way, only some of them were 80%. Some of them were 14 push-ups compared to men's 30. And by the way, when you're talking about, I just want to be clear, you do understand this when it comes to physical things. Two things. One, the minimal standard is set because that's what we consider the minimum for being able to do the job proficiently. And if you can't quite do it, if you couldn't quite, you can only lift 90% of the beam off the person as they're bleeding out. Guess what? You bleed out, right? So that's not negligible. And secondly, when it comes to physical fitness, like being able to like bench press 15 times as opposed to 12 times, those last 3 times make all the difference, right? It's not just,
bench pressing,
push-ups, bench pressing, pull-ups, the distance of a mile, etc. Or the time that it takes to run a mile. I don't even understand y'all's argument here. If you've already conceded that you want the most proficient people, can either of you give me a reason why it would be beneficial to prioritize an immutable characteristic like gender or biological sex, that's a better word than gender, and have someone that has less ability? Can either of you give me one reason why that would be something that we should do?
I don't think I ever said it was good to prioritize that. I wouldn't want to prioritize that. I would want there to be, ideally, if we were going to change the standards between men and women for specifically law enforcement practices, right, we want the standards for their physicality to be somewhat similar. I'm okay with lowering it a little bit if it's negligible. And then on top of that, there are many situations in being a police officer, actually the vast majority of the time, women probably aren't, or officers probably aren't carrying people out of burning buildings, right? They're probably not lifting incredibly heavy, enormous things. Most of the time they're doing law enforcement, right? They're enacting law enforcement. And there are other ways, there are other workarounds to the physical aspect of law enforcement that include things like having guns or tasers or pepper spray. And then on top of that, it's also incredibly important, I would argue more important, that they have a strong cognitive ability in those situations.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, meeting the combat training is more important than how many push-ups that they can do.
But for all we know, the combat training is also different, right? And I don't think that it's more important. I don't know where you two
James
come
turned me
off.
because I'm eating. Oh, sorry, I had my mic muted. Sorry.
Oh no.
I don't know where either of you get off as being experts on law enforcement or these physically demanding jobs, knowing, you know what, the minimal standard to be hired at these jobs, actually, it's not that important. It's okay if women can only do 70%. We're okay with that because cognitive issues, in our opinion, are more important. I'm sorry, you've already admitted that you want the person who has the best ability. When it comes to any job, I would prioritize the person who has the best ability to do that job over immutable characteristics, which neither of you have given me one reason why we should even factor in. Corbin, you just said I wouldn't prioritize it. Okay, if you're saying that you would be against the prioritizing of, for example, hiring a woman, can you give me any reason other than prioritizing she's a woman that you would lower the standards for women?
Yeah, because I'm sorry, could you say that again one more time?
Can you give me one reason that a law enforcement area would lower the standards of women for the job other than because they're women, because they're prioritizing hiring women?
Yeah, because it increases your potential labor force by 50%.
But wait a minute.
Right.
The idea is the reason that you want a bigger labor force is because you want the most talented people for your job, right?
Yeah, and there are plenty of women that approximate the general.
It's not approximate. If you have to lower the standards by default.
If you're lowering the standards by a negligible amount, that's approximate.
I mean, think about it this way. Think of the absurdity of it. Think of the absurdity of this statement. Let's say that you're hiring, take physicality out of it. Let's say I'm hiring a coder. And I want someone that's coded in C++ for at least 2 years and can show me jobs that they've done. You would say, well, that's exclusionary. That's limiting your pool of applicants. Instead, you should open it up to even people that have never touched a computer. Look at that. You've just broadened your pool of applicants. That must be a good thing. Well, no, so it won't be a good thing because now those people that you've broadened it to are completely irrelevant to wanting to hire to do the job.
So I don't think that's analogous.
There's kind of a snuck premise in there. A person who's never touched a computer probably couldn't code to save their lives. A woman, there's this idea that they're not being able to execute the job as it's laid out versus a woman within approximate, whatever standard to a man can probably execute the job of a law enforcement officer.
Define approximate.
5 to 10%.
Okay, so I just gave examples. Would you like me to read them again of ones that went outside of 5 to 10%? I think that you're let me be quick.
So Rob, we're arguing the principle of it. I can agree. If it's like, okay, this woman can do 10% of the physicality that a man can. Yeah, I'd say that's retarded, of course.
Okay, so I just want to be clear.
Wow, I like that.
I just want to say real quick. I just want to say that I find
I'm retarded, so please don't use that language.
I find the 10% argument to be completely arbitrary. Again, we're talking about, imagine that we do this in other things. Like, you acknowledge that we have standards tests that you have to pass, right, in order to get a driver's license. Everybody acknowledges that? Okay, so let's say, a person who got 90% of the way to passing a test but failed by 10%, that's approximately good, so give them a license, right?
Are you appealing to technicality with this? Yeah.
No, it's not appealing to technicality. It's saying that we have
that's a legal standard, right? People who go 70%, or some people who get 90 to 80% on a driving test are able to pass still technically.
Let's say you have to get 70% or higher to pass your driver's test, right? Let's say I get 65. Should I be allowed to drive?
No.
Technically speaking, no.
I'm approximately as good as Alex who got 70%.
But I don't know if so we can argue the legality of it, or we can kind of argue the principle of it, right?
How about the principle? Forget about the legality.
Okay, then yeah, sure. 65%.
I think that's nonsense. So I think that what you're doing is you're thinking that the way that the let me finish my point, please. I think that you're assuming that the standards that are set forth by these people that set the standards for these hiring practices or licensing practices are completely arbitrary. What's the difference between getting 65% versus 70%? I disagree. I think that we have to have minimal thresholds for these things. And anytime we say for immutable characteristics, we will say certain populations don't have to meet the minimum standards is not only the definition of DEI, but illustrates why DEI is bad. Because now you're getting people that don't meet what we've all conceded are the minimal standards. And again, I just want to say, not only do I find your standard of 5% or 10% to be arbitrary, the first numbers I gave were things like this. FBI, women complete 14 push-ups versus 30 for men. That's less than 50.
Well,
So you just took the one out of all the law enforcement I went with, one said 70 to 80%, and you were like, oh, that's basically the same as 90 to 95%, so I'm okay with it.
Well, we're arguing the principle now, and I don't necessarily know like all of the standards of FBI work or law enforcement. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, but we're arguing the way things are, and even if we argue the principle, I have yet to hear a compelling reason other than it broadens the work pool why we should hire people that are less capable because of biological immutable characteristics.
So you say that like these standards of maybe 70% to pass the driving test, that's there for a reason, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So what if it's 69.99999%?
Right. These are what this is sort of a fallacy of thresholds. You're right. At some point, there's always an arbitrary distinction, right, that we would be able to say these things. Now, it's not going to work in a literal sense here because presumably there aren't going to be millions of questions on this test that would give you fractions of a percentage. So you're probably going to get something like 20 written questions, which means that it would be impossible to get 69.99%. And instead, what you're likely to see is that you would get 68% as opposed to 70. And I assume that the people have set those standards and said, look, on average, we need people to get at least this because our studies show people that get less than that would be more of a danger to society, and we need them to work harder to ensure that they have more knowledge of this in order to pass the test.
I can agree. Like the fact of the matter, it's probably not going to bear out that way. But like again, in principle, right? There's probably some threshold where it gets so close, so approximate to that standard that it's negligible.
You understand
it's just kind of the point I'm trying to get at.
You understand the fallacious argument here because I could say, if I say, sure, 69.99999, you'll be like, how about 69.99998? And then we could do this all night until we're like, how about 31.999997? And I say no, and you're like, but you said 31.99998 would have been acceptable. So you see the problem with that. The other problem is you haven't given a reason why we would prioritize people with less ability.
I never said we're prioritizing them. We're just increasing the labor force. It's not necessarily meaning that we're prioritizing.
Okay, let me ask,
taking them in over people who.
The argument's circular, though, right? Because increasing the labor force would real quick, Garet, and then I promise I'll leave you respond. Increasing the labor force would only matter if we're increasing the labor force in order to get the most talented people. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, so then if you have to lower the standards to increase the labor force, the implication there is you're increasing the labor force purely for people that aren't as qualified for the job.
Yes, but you can have people that can execute on other aspects other than just the physicality of the job, right? Like the cognitive aspect, right? Like you said, the most talented. So let's say a woman has like 200 IQ, right? But maybe she's like 5% less strong than a man, right? Like,
no, I don't think that she should be a beat cop. She would probably be better off being like sort of a homicide detective or someone that doesn't need to meet those qualifications, right? But the idea of being a beat cop, being someone that uses more physical strength in their everyday job, like a firefighter, maybe she should be someone that's like developing the equipment and the planning for firefighters as opposed to the person that needs to meet these minimal physical standards. I mean, the problem is you guys are just really losing this debate, and I think you know it, and I think everyone that's listening knows.
I have something... I have some stuff to say about this. So I would say that the reason why there are lower standards is because, so using the FBI as an example, they hire women because there's value beyond just meeting physical standards. With having women enhancing investigations, accessing hard to reach communities.
Show me the data.
Public trust.
Show me.
I just did a Google search and they have a commitment to diversity because of these reasons.
Okay, show me that bears out. Go ahead.
Diverse perspectives on problem solving.
Okay, show me that bears out.
How am I going to do it? Like you already know that my computer is having problems. I'm not able to share my screen. I'm not able to provide you with a link because I'm doing this on my phone.
Okay, I didn't.
I can send you links to research on it on Twitter, like after this is over. I'm happy to do that, or X or whatever it's called.
Okay, so then why shouldn't they lower the standards physicality for men that come from gypsy families? Don't they have a diverse perspective?
Women or men that come from gypsy families?
Correct.
Why wouldn't they be able to do push-ups?
It doesn't matter. It's not relevant that they do the push-ups. They're coming from a more diverse perspective, right?
Well, yeah, but I don't see why they're... I
Forgive me.
don't see why the standards would be
again,
lower
we're not-
for gypsy men.
Again,
like,
Rob,
I
we're
do-
not saying
one
that
thing
you
I
should
do wanna do is-
prioritize.
I want to give Stein a question or a chance to jump in, as we've been missing him.
Yeah, I haven't
Did you
said.
wanna-
he's eating.
Oh, you're on mute. Let me unmute
No,
you.
well, I haven't been able to get a word in because everybody here wants to talk about the most inconsequential bull crap. I mean, when you guys have really conceded the argument already, I don't know. I have the hiccups, gosh, and
We didn't concede the argument.
You did.
you did.
We didn't.
Does
don't know about
DEI
Garet.
hires occur?
But yeah, I don't care about the prompt.
Oh, so you conceded the prompt. Is it true that by lowering standards, it means that we will get people that are less qualified?
No, not necessarily.
It certainly does.
No.
You don't think it would ever happen?
No. Oh my god.
I mean, you could have an unqualified person of any ethnicity, race, color, or whatever.
Should we
So-
lower the IQs, or should we lower the test standards to get into the FBI for people of diverse backgrounds? Because they would bring a different way of thinking.
No, of course not.
Why not? How doesn't that meet the same metric of what Garet just said about having diverse ways of thinking benefit the FBI?
Well, you still have to be able to
Because
have.
we
valuable
never said that. We
insight
never
as a
said you
result
should
of critical thinking
prioritize those
skills.
things.
One at a
over
time.
other-
Right.
Right.
I don't know if anybody heard either of you, because
I didn't
both Corbin and Garrett were talking
Go
at the
ahead,
same
Corbin.
time.
Yeah. Again, we never
Sorry.
said that you should prioritize these things, Rob.
Yes, that is
it's-
de facto.
That's not what we said.
Okay, I want you. So then we get back to this question. If it's not prioritizing them for being women, why would you lower the standards just for women? If it has nothing
It
to do with
increases the labor
prioritizing.
force.
Corbin.
There's
Okay.
already.
Okay,
real quick.
so then
Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm
Corbin,
sorry.
I
Oh,
think
I'm
I
sorry.
can
Yeah, I'm
shed-
sorry. That's my bad.
Corbin,
No,
I
wait,
think.
no,
Rob,
real quick, Alex, can I say this? Then why wouldn't you lower the standard for everyone to the same equal metric? Wouldn't that increase the labor force even more?
I'm sorry. Could you say that again? You
If
cut out a
you're
little bit
only
on my end.
lowering the standards for women and your answer is that's not prioritizing women because it's just broadening the pool, why wouldn't you lower the standards for both men and women? That would broaden the pool even further. Why do it just for women?
Because
You're prioritizing
if
women.
we're doing this, because if again we're arguing in principle, if the woman is approximating that standard, then it's negligible and it doesn't matter.
Okay, but if a man is approximating that standard, it would be negligible and wouldn't matter. So why not lower the standard to increase men that couldn't do the 40 push-ups so that you broaden the pool? It's because, why
Well,
can't you guys
there's a
just admit
limit.
it's because they're prioritizing diversity, equity,
It's
and
not,
inclusion.
it's not because they're prioritizing
Yes, it
it.
I mean,
Okay,
I don't know
hold
what
on,
to say
hold
other
on,
than to
hold
appeal
on.
to people's common sense. This is
Hold on.
weaponized
Wait,
stupidity.
how long have women been police officers now? How long has that been like a thing?
Okay. Let me say something because I haven't got to talk at all because I've been eating and all this stuff. Now, James, I know it's going to be hard with the overlay. I need to do a share screen because I think this will shut down Corbin. I think this will show him that these requirements that they put in place are done on purpose and that he doesn't have the IQ that you think you do, Corbin. So am I able to share my screen?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, hold on.
So I think Corbin begs to differ, but we'll give you a chance to share your screen. Folks, if you haven't yet, hit that like button. We do appreciate your support.
Okay.
And now your screen is showing, Alex.
Okay, so you guys can see the screen. You
Yep.
guys can see this. So this is what it says. Court okays barring. Watch this, Corbin. Are you watching? Are you looking, Corbin?
Yeah, I'm looking, buddy.
As long as you don't play the sound.
No sound. Courts okay. This is ABC News. I'm sure you believe them. I'm sure that's where you got vaccinated. I'm sure they told you where to get it. Court okays barring high IQs.
Boosted 5 times.
For the love of Pete, we need to, when someone's talking, it's good to let them
And it's
finish
always
their
when I
sentence.
talk, James. They always want to chirp in. You guys are like little birds. You guys always want to chirp when I'm talking. When you guys talk, I'm just quiet like a mouse. But when I start talking, all of a sudden Garrett wants to get very loquacious. Okay,
Jump.
so real quick.
All right.
It
Jump,
was
we'll
just a
jump back
joke.
to your point.
Carry on.
Court okays barring high IQs for cops. September 8th, 2000, before September 11th, what a different world. A police officer was rejected after he scored too high on an intelligence test, has lost an appeal in his federal lawsuit against the city. The Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Newark upheld the lower court's decision that the city did not discriminate against Robert Jordan because the same standards were applied to everyone who took the test. This kind of puts an official face on discrimination in America against people of a certain class. Jordan said today from his Waterford home, I maintain you have no more control over your basic intelligence than your eye color or your gender or anything else. He said he does not plan to take any further legal action. Jordan, a 49-year-old college graduate, took the exam in 1996 and scored 33 points, the equivalent of an IQ of 125. But New London police interviewed only candidates who scored 20 to 27 on the theory that those who scored too high could get bored with police work and leave soon after undergoing costly training. Most cops just above the average score most cops just above normal, the average score nationally for police officers 21 to 22, the equivalent of an IQ of 104, just a little bit above average. Jordan alleged his rejection from the police force was discrimination. He sued the city, saying his civil rights were violated because he denied equal protection under the law. But the U.S. District Court found that New London had shown a rational basis for the policy. In a ruling dated August 23rd, the Second Circuit agreed. The court said the policy might be unwise, but was a rational way to reduce job turnover. Jordan has worked as a prison guard since he took the test. So this is a perfect example of, I don't even know how to stop sharing my screen. How do I stop sharing, James? Where do I see it?
Same way that you started.
Now my Zoom looks all different.
I'll pull it up.
Oh, there you go. I got it. So my point is, you have a Supreme Court case of a white guy that was too smart. So when you're talking all this cognitive, all that stuff, you actually have to be a certain level of dumb to be a cop. So it's not about getting the smartest and brightest woman because she's really smart. She gets to be an extra good cop. As a matter of fact, if the woman's too smart, she wouldn't get hired. So all of your argument about the cognitive ability of a cop means absolutely nothing.
That's just such a non sequitur. I don't know what to do with it.
What do you mean? This is exactly what the guy literally could. We're talking about the basic requirements. He didn't pass a requirement because he's too smart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So while there is a rational
too smart
basis,
is not the same thing as being too dumb to just
what
because
I'm
you're
saying
too smart doesn't mean you can't be smart to be a police officer, right?
But you could be too smart, according to the police according to the police.
Yeah, you can be too smart, but it doesn't mean you can't be smart, right? Like I think it's
you can't be that smart. You can't be that smart, according to them. You can't be that smart on that IQ.
Sure.
But do you understand?
I don't know how the
basis for the decision. I mean, at the same time, I disagree with someone can be rational and
okay. How about this, Corbin? Do you agree that guy should not be eligible to be a cop because he's too smart? Do you agree with that?
No, I think that's kind
okay.
of
So then you don't agree with DEI. Then you don't agree with DEI. Then you don't agree with DEI.
No, we agree with DEI, and that's why he should have been hired.
No, this is a chance where we actually should be going into the Q&A. We do have a number.
I don't understand how this is such a hard concept.
May I say something real quick? Just real quick, because it's taking it in a slightly different direction. Just real quick, I think that this speaks for itself. Like the argument that they have on the lowering credibility or lowering ability. This is just one issue with physical. It's the most obvious issue. But Garet, you mentioned this McKinsey study. The McKinsey study is a joke. This study's been cited for years, and they keep redoing it. That says that diversity is good for these Fortune 500 companies. In 2024, a leading economics professor at George Mason University attempted to replicate the findings. He is incapable of replicating it, nor has anyone else been able to replicate these studies. And it turns out that the exact correlation causation is reversed in that study. What happens is you take a bunch of companies that are doing well, and because they're doing so well, they have money to piss away on DEI ventures. But sure, a company like NVIDIA, who because of their product is getting a huge market share and is growing by leaps and bounds, if they say, oh, and by the way, we're going to try diversity because there is a virtue signaling incentive to do so, people say, see, the reason NVIDIA grew was because of diversity, when in reality it is they decided to try to be more diverse because they were growing by leaps and bounds.
That's only one study out of all the ones that I was referencing.
Most of them are based on that study, and it's non-replicable. What we see is that you're talking about companies like Microsoft and other companies that are doing incredibly great, and then say, oh, diversity is the reason for. But there's no evidence to suggest, nor does it intuitively make sense that this would be the case. For example, can you admit this, that the diversity that would matter would be diversity of thought, correct?
I see you
Right,
guys
different
in the
perspectives
Primetime
to
channel.
eliminate bias.
Okay, so then why is
Make
it
sure
that
to
so
go
many of these
follow
places
Minem and see it,
continually
too.
to hire people that only come from a left-wing perspective? Just because I might be brown and the next person white and the next person a
Stein,
lesbian of
I'm
color
making
and the
fun
next
of mine.
person a Muslim, if
I
we
can't
all
even-
share
I
the
can't
same
even copy
political
him
beliefs,
right.
wouldn't that mean that we're not diverse? In fact, 10 white guys of different political and cultural beliefs would be more diverse in the way you're suggesting than people based on race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, etc. Wouldn't you agree with that?
No, because they wouldn't have the same perspective as people of color, for example, or women. Like
That's
this,
not
no
the
matter how much
perspective
they might politically agree, they're still
that
going to have a different perspective than people
that's
of
not true.
like minority.
What you're
Okay.
talking about is you've already conceded what we would say may be good in certain situations would be diversity of thought. And we say, well, there are certain things that we could see that may lead to diversity of thought. For example, it may be that people from geographic areas have a different perspective and so they have diverse thought. It may be people of different sexual orientations. It may be people of different ethnicities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But those are just all means to an end. If you have all of these people that have different sexual orientation, different this, different that, but they all have the same thoughts, that's not diverse. And what we see increasingly is, particularly in industries like the tech industry, they want people that share the same monolithic cultural and thinking process when it comes to this. And I have papers that show this in DEI and others, that they're actually hiring people that have all the same thought processes and how these programs should go forward, but because they are a different rainbow color palette.
Q&A. I thought you were going to give a quick response.
Okay.
Can I just respond to what he said though?
We'll give you a pithy response.
And
Rob, you have to
There was
accept
another-
that he has to have, we're going to let him have the last word.
Yeah, so another aspect of one of the studies that I read is like Democrats versus Republicans. So if two Democrats are being asked to work together on something, then their shared bias prevented them from seeing all of the facts. But Republican with a Democrat provides for a more intuitive and more open to different perspectives and eliminating bias and discovering all of the relevant facts. The whole idea behind DEI, at least in my view, is to promote the elimination of bias and increase diversity of perspectives. So
Eliminate bias? It literally just creates one.
We have to jump into the Q&A. We are going to jump into it. Want to say, folks, thank you very much for your questions. We're going to try to move through these fast as we have a number of questions already. This one first coming in from, do appreciate all of our guests. Thank you, gentlemen, for that. I like the spirited dialogue. It's much better the way it was tonight compared to if it were boring. So I do appreciate that you guys are passionate. This one from Maryland, thanks very much. This Primetime 99 on the grind all the time. Okay. This one from
Thank you for the super chat.
Big League Drew says, if there are no DI hires, how do you explain Alex Stein?
Oh,
that's true.
Gotta get those,
I'm Jewish. I'm fake Jewish.
Autism quotas filled, right?
I kissed the wall. They gave me the money.
It's because you're a special little guy. Okay, this one from Carl Slagan says, I have come, by the way, Alex, have you gotten the $7,000 offer? Is that real?
I've got a bunch. Oh yeah, 7,000. I'm up to 49,000. I'm up to 7 tweets.
Carl Slagan says, I have come here to chew bubblegum and listen to a thoughtful debate on politics, and I forgot to buy bubblegum. Well, I'm glad you got what you came here for. It was a thoughtful debate. Big League Drew says, is affirmative action racist?
Yes. Prioritizing people based on immutable characteristics such as race is bigoted towards race, which is the definition of racism. If I choose to only hire black people, I am by default being racist to people of all other races.
Oh, and this might be entertaining for the audience. This is where Rob and I might disagree, because I've argued with Andrew Wilson about this, is I do believe in systemic racism. I do believe that our system was racist towards whichever race that they could basically take advantage of the most, whether it's black. And now I feel like our system is racist towards white men. So that's why I believe in systemic racism. But Rob might say systemic racism is not real.
No, I think that there is systemic racism against all race. The truth is all races, all sexual orientation, all genders are both bigoted against and bigoted for simultaneously. Now, the levels of those may change based on location, based on time, but certainly there's systemic racism against all races, systemic bigotry against all sexual orientations, etc.
Would you guys agree with that
got it.
statement that there's racism even towards white people, Garrett, or is that too far off?
Yeah.
Do you think that's...
I would say so.
Yeah.
I would say so.
Progressive far left gets a little bit unhinged with some of that stuff.
Yeah, they do.
Wow. This one from Big League Drew says, if DEI isn't real, why did Boeing tell quote unquote minority applicants special keywords to put their applications to the top for review? So allegedly Boeing, they're saying, said to some minority applicants, like, hey, make sure you put word X or word Y in your application so that it goes to the top. They say, or why do companies have quotas for quote unquote minorities in general?
They concede that it's
Boeing
real.
the FA was Boeing was it the FAA lawsuit filed
I'm not
like
sure.
10,
I think it may
15
have
years
been.
ago. I think there were changes to the like FAA like air traffic control applicant or like hiring standards that basically implemented like it was like a background or like a biological demographic or like background demographic that specifically was like trying to in some ways increase diversity, but it wasn't meant to be weaponized in a way to where it was prioritizing diversity. And specifically, I think there was one individual, I looked into this case like maybe a couple of weeks ago. I think there was one individual that was leaking like to a Black National Caucus for Black student, like for buzzwords for Black students to put into their resumes that would kind of like help them out in the hiring process.
To the questioner, I'll say this. They conceded from the get-go that DEI is occurring. They're just saying that it's a good thing. There were all sorts of arguments I was prepared to make. One was racial quotas that we see from places like Boeing, Microsoft, and other places, which show that there's DEI. But even if you just think this through, it's obviously the case. Do you ever see these commercials for law firms that'll say things like this? Our partners have collectively 73 years of litigation experience. Now, the fact that they're promoting that would intuitively mean that they're probably hiring people based on that preference. They want to say, look at the years of experience we have. So therefore, they would prioritize that in the hiring process. Now, look at how many companies tout their diversity. You think that's not factoring in their hiring process? Of course it is. We all know it. And the people that want to deny it are just blatantly bullshitting you. In this debate, unfortunately, fortunately, they admit that it's occurring. And then they get bogged down on the most uninteresting of topics, trying to pretend that lowering the standards for women in physical jobs somehow isn't an example of bad DEI, which is laughably impossible to win. But I welcome them for being game and attempting to do it, albeit frivolously.
This one coming in from, do appreciate your question. We got that one. Marilyn says, oh my, here we go. Tell Alex what the absolute base king he is and always will be. Okay. And then
I'm not as base as Rob. I'm not as base as Rob.
You have a giant fan.
This one
I got
from
a couple.
Carl.
I got a couple. Tucker Carlson's
Carl
stepson.
says, Chef Boyardee over here. Okay.
We're cooking.
Kabir says,
I'm cooking. He's talking about me because I was cooking all night. Same with Rob. Rob's the damn chef of the night.
Issa Kabir says, Prime Stein, may our brother rest in peace. What? Wait, I don't understand. Don't worry, he's not.
Oh, he's probably talking about Charlie. Rest in peace, Charlie.
I see. Okay. And
real quick, let's actually ask about that. I don't, I get to represent Turning Point. I love this so much. What did you guys, real quick, I know to go, but Corbin and Garet, I'd like to get y'all's opinions as left-leaning guys. What did y'all think about the Charlie Kirk assassination? I know how Rob feels about it.
Yeah, it was horrible, tragic.
Horrible.
Shouldn't happen. Yeah.
Horrible, tragic.
Should be
Should not have
executed
happened.
for political opinions.
Yeah.
Do you think the left is violent?
The easy one.
Well, but do you guys think the left is violent? Because I'm not, and I'd say the right is, and I'm not like trying to just kind of sit in the middle, but I go to a lot of these protests, even though the Proud Boys look scary, and I've been to protests where the Proud Boys got in fights. So I've seen there's instances where there have been fights and conservative ones, but I'm telling you, 9 out of 10 times the like Antifa type protests I go to, those are the ones that are physical. Like maybe 1 out of 10 right-leaning Trump protests, there might be a fight, but I'm telling you, all the leftist ones, and maybe that is because I'm antagonizing. That definitely that plays a factor. But the left, they do hit and scream and are like more impulsive when it comes to being like physical. So
they certainly the left is more violent.
I abhor violence. Just 1,000%. I don't agree with any of it. So I honestly hope that the temperature cools off in this country because it really needs to.
I'll be very quick on that. Go ahead, Corbin. I'm sorry.
No, you started.
Do you remember that clip, Alex, of Sam, what's his name, Sam Harris, that's on Bill Maher's show with Ben Affleck, when he's talking about Islam, and Ben Affleck goes, "That's racist. That's racist." You remember that clip? It was sort of viral back in the day. What Sam Harris was saying there was he was talking about study after study that shows the problem with political Islam. It's only about 2%, poll after poll shows, of ones that are willing to engage in terrorism for their religion. But what he says is striking is the next percentage that's like 20% that's willing to justify, celebrate, or ignore that political violence. That's what the Democratic Party is. It's not just the fringe that's willing to commit the extremism. It's the people you have like Destiny saying, we want Republicans to fear for their lives to go into public. And that's what a huge minority of Democrats believe. In fact, 55% of Democrats polled said they could at least somewhat justify the murder of Donald Trump. The same poll said 48% felt the same way about Elon Musk. And you can see how they felt about Luigi Mangione killing the United Healthcare CEO. So the problem is there is a lot of glorification of violence on the left, and that's because for years they've thought their opposition are evil fascists, and so therefore the ends always justify the means, even if many of them are too cowardly to carry out those deeds themselves.
Better than I could say.
Well, so I guess not. I guess not to try and to like overextend the segment, but the study that, or the polling that Rob. Sorry.
You probably are, but as long
okay, I'll just say one quick little thing. The polling that Rob just cited, I've looked over it. If we're referring to the same one, it's almost completely bullshit. Republicans are generally more okay, especially MAGA Republicans, with allowing political violence if it comes to things like, say, restoring a stolen election. Sorry, that's all I want to say.
Well, real quick, I just want to say, I know I got to go to the caveat, but I do think maybe, though, conservatives kind of are more military vibe. So, like, there are conservatives that are okay with political violence. And when I talked about the Proud Boys, I'm not saying the Proud Boys are fighting that much, but I've seen fights at conservative events very rarely. But I'm just telling you, I just want to make this last point, from just my touching and feeling, I've been affected way more. And I know that is because my political viewpoints are different than, the other ones. But I'm just saying, like, most conservatives, if they are okay with political violence, it's because they were in the military and they probably have PTSD and they probably had to, see violence and be killed, so they're probably desensitized to it. And if they're not, they probably have, a little bit of the same passion. And like what Rob says, we probably do view the other people as a little bit of an enemy. But I'm telling you, overall, the left is much more violent or okay with violence than the right. You can
3 weeks from now.
Okay, let's say Hassan died. Do you think all the conservatives, there might be some that would make some celebratory tweets, but the majority of them would not be like Charlie Kirk celebrating Hassan's death. It would not
3
be
weeks
like
from now, if I was to say 3 weeks from
Hold
now,
on,
there's going to be...
Alex, you guys, come on. This is just way too much.
This isn't the topic of the debate. We need to move on.
Yeah, sorry. Hey, Rob, I'd love to do like a follow-up with you on this sometime, dude. I think it would be really fun.
I hate to do it, but
I agree.
This one from Emperor Fat Ass Dog says Joe Biden hired Kamala Harris specifically because she was a woman of color. If that's not DEI, I don't know what is.
Contenchi Braun Jackson. Again, our opponents concede that DEI exists. They just say it's a good thing.
Never said it was a good thing, but
it's not a bad thing. There, how about that?
Yeah. No, when it's unqualified people being put into positions of power, it's a bad thing. I'll call it categorically bad. But
right,
again,
my initial point
my initial point that conservatives blow it out of proportion. Kamala Harris wasn't elected as a DEI hire. She had plenty of political experience at that point in her career. She was AG of California. She served on the Senate. She was a senator.
But Corbin, real quick, I have to cut you off. You don't realize when Joe Biden said he wanted to hire a woman of color, that negated every white person that was a male. So you heard him say this. We
Alex,
know
can you
this.
Can you tell me what an election is?
Well, we didn't vote for Kamala.
It's a popularity contest, right? It's a popularity contest, and
Joe
when representation does tend to matter, when representation does tend to matter in a popularity contest, right? Joe Biden was already an old white guy.
We did in the elections. We didn't choose to pick a running partner.
And then Kamala Harris.
Hate to do this, but since you guys are just talking over each other, we're going to go to the next question. This one from Emperor Fat Ass Dog says, to the no side, why do some colleges have black only dorms? would you guys consider that discrimination if it's only for one specific race? Let's hear from someone we haven't heard from a ton recently. Garet, any thoughts on this?
I mean, I've never heard of this, and I didn't go to college, so I would honestly need to look into it. I'm sorry.
But more specifically, like you probably know what a dorm
Does that
is, like
happen,
people
James?
sleep in
Like, you have
those.
you have a PhD. Does that happen?
There are
Yeah,
black
but
only
I don't.
dorms. Yeah.
So these black only dorms, they specifically are saying like in theory, so a dorm is like something you sleep in like an apartment but smaller. Would you guys
Right.
consider the discrimination if it's only for one specific race, namely like there's dorms where it could be mixed, it could be just anybody, and then there's also like a building that's like, hey, this is like the black dorms, and they're like, but hey, well, is it fair that we have like a building that's just black dorms?
Babe, Eric
Could we have
Johnson's
like
supposedly gonna
just
run for
Asian
attorney
or just
general.
white dorms? Like, would that?
That's not funny.
I
Is
would
it-
call that racist.
I mean, yeah, that seems like discrimination
That's
to me, and I
not
would want to know
funny.
what is the goal they're trying to accomplish,
All my
or what
jokes.
is the
He's gonna
root
be attorney
cause of
general.
it.
We're gonna
Like, what
get
is the
kicked out.
problem they're trying to
He's
solve
gonna
with
throw
that?
me in jail.
But that on the surface, that seems like discrimination to me.
He might. Oh my god.
You got it. This is the one. This is from Emperor. My only guess in terms of, I would guess they probably do have some like, hey, this is a building that is like for blacks only, and they obviously don't have that where it's like a building for just whites only. I would guess because they're trying to boost retention among blacks, because especially at like blacks tend to have higher graduation rates at historically black colleges and universities compared to if they go to the other universities.
Why is
that are
that,
just like a
James?
mix.
Why is that? Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I mean, that's a fact, though.
It's
I
a
don't
fact.
know why it is.
I know, but why? I know that
But-
sounds weird. But why does like reverse segregation or segregation? I don't know. That is a weird thing because that's what they even say. And this is just a conspiracy. I'll just be real quick. That segregation, and this is, I don't know if I necessarily agree with this, was actually bad for the black community because it dispersed the black community and it let kind of the white guys turn the blacks into customers, when at the time the black community was each other's customers. So they had an economy that, like, they would go to their own restaurants, they would shop at their own stores. So they actually were more successful in society because they could like equally compete because they had the same customers, because they had, you know what I'm saying, because they shopped within each other. And then when segregation happened, then everything got dispersed, and then the white guy took all their customers. That's a conspiracy. I mean, maybe there's a little truth to it. Why are they more successful, and women in a predominantly black area, when they're around more people they're comfortable with? Why does that happen?
It's not necessarily the conversation of DEI talking about this, but I don't have a problem with people voluntarily segregating into groups of their own sort of skin color, gender, etc. That's fine by me. I don't care. The problem is if our tax dollars are going into public universities and we have spaces for some particular races but not others, that shouldn't be allowed. And so if you want to have a fraternity that's black only and it's not getting government tax on, I say go for it. No one has the right to tell you that you should be forced to associate with people you don't want to associate with. The problem is if you would do that as a white fraternity, holy shit, would it be a scandal? And that's what's absurd.
But all right. But let's give the last word, because this question was originally, I think, meant to try to be a stumper for Garet and Corbin. Let's give them the last word. Garet or Corbin. Damn. OBS is like wonking out one more time on me.
Yeah.
We'll give you the last word, Corbin or Garet.
Go for it, Corbin. I already answered.
Sure. Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Basically, well, I feel like
Oh, was it about the discrimination thing?
Black dorms. Is it racist?
Yeah, I mean, like Rob said, voluntary I have less issue with, but I'm not entirely sure on. But if it's like forced discrimination, yeah, it's of course racist.
Yeah, and there certainly shouldn't be tax dollars involved.
Yeah, well,
So
all
from
universities.
Emperor Fat Ass Dog says, who do you guys want to see John Cena's final opponent be? With his final match?
Ric
I want the
Flair,
Undertaker to come out of retirement and
Ric
do
Flair
it.
is
Because the Undertaker
Wait.
had that good podcast, and then now he sold it to WWE, and I love the Taker, but then he fired his co-host supposedly, so he needs to go back into the ring and pay his pittance for all that drama he did.
Not only
Is
should
Ric
it be
Flair
the
even
Undertaker,
alive?
I think it will be. I think it will be the
that
Undertaker
what
because Well, Cena's put out images of Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, implying like the two best of their time.
Yeah.
And who would you put as like that he hasn't wrestled recently that would be like the top tier? Probably the Undertaker. So I think that it's likely that that could be the case.
That'd be cool.
Wait,
Was
Rob, is
John
Ric
Cena
Flair alive?
MMA or
Ric Flair's alive.
WWE?
WWE.
Oh, okay.
Can't see me. You know the guy, he's
Rick-
the wigger guy.
That's true.
Yeah,
I haven't paid
Go to the
attention
next
to
one.
wrestling since I was a kid.
Big
Oh.
League Drew says, name a better combo than mac and peas.
Mac and-
Let's ignore that.
Mac and
this is
peas?
from
Mac and peas, like mac and cheese with peas in them, or
I
So that's a
guess.
troll. Is that a rage bait
Gross.
donation?
honestly,
I
the
think
like
it's
the like Kraft mac and
supposed to be
cheese with
racist.
some beef and some peas in it, like broccoli maybe. That shit was baller as a kid. Okay,
Listen, if
Nah,
these are
what-
some
what-
kind of
what I use-
racist dog whistle, we're all too innocent for this shit. So we're
Yeah,
literally
we
taking
don't-
it
Yeah,
literal.
sorry, I'm-
That's
What I used to make when I was younger was mac and cheese with those little smoky sausages and mix all that together.
That's delicious.
that shit
the
was,
little,
that was
that's
good
so
too.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
are so
Oh
good.
my god.
I used to like those in the
So
barbecue
good.
sauce too.
We're gonna have to wrap up. The last question here. I know, unfortunately, OBS is just so bad. I'm sorry, guys. Don't worry. I mean, they have heard the vast majority, like 99% of what's been said. It's just that it's been a little bit choppy. Emperor Fat Ass Dog says, according to Biden's own notes, when deciding for vice president, OBS just stopped again. I'm sorry. I was gonna have Ryan host tonight because the hotels admittedly don't have the greatest Wi-Fi, but I really wanted to host this one, and now I've gotten us into this trouble. I'm sorry. I should have just let Ryan do it, but I hate letting Ryan host the good ones. So long story short, Emperor Fat Ass Dogs says, according to Biden's own notes, when deciding for vice president, it said that Amy Klobuchar was more qualified than Kamala. So again, how's that not DEI?
I don't, no idea.
Can I ask the question a different way to you specifically, Corbin? You talked about how it's okay because it's broadening the pool of people. In this case, when you say we are specifically looking for a black woman, wouldn't that be shrinking the pool of people, and therefore wouldn't you be against it?
Specifically for like voting's a little bit different because we're trying to.
How?
I think that Kamala.
You're trying to appeal to the voters.
I think Kamala Biden was a good ticket because Biden already had, he was a straight white guy. He was an old straight white guy, right? So he already had that portion of the base. But Kamala represented a more progressive and also ethnic side of the Democratic base, which is also important to the party.
Okay, then let's do the Supreme Court justice, because that has nothing to do with voting. So limiting it to a black woman to be on the Supreme Court, that has nothing to do with voting. Isn't that shortening the pool of people? And wouldn't you be against that? And that's exactly what Biden did with Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Okay, I'm not as familiar with Jackson, but if he did, then yeah, I would say that's not good.
And would you also say, lastly, that if it came to a job, if I'm hiring for my company for a new supervisor and I say I want it to be a black woman, that I have artificially shrunk my pool of acceptable candidates, and that would
By
be bad?
definition, yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's what a lot
that
of
would be
DEI is.
Categorically speaking, yes. Like that's,
Yeah, you
that's
guys,
DEI,
aren't
baby.
too bad to debate. You guys are fair. They're not too bad, Rob. I think Corbin.
Well,
is
I mean,
good.
like I don't think me or Garrett, like I'm center left. I think Garrett is also kind of like liberal-ish leaning. Like you'd have to find someone much more to the extreme from either of us to kind of hardcore bite down on the pill of we need to put unqualified people into any of these positions. And honestly, I think that's the majority of like the Democratic opinion.
And not trying to be a sentimental,
Right.
like,
Must go.
well, Rob, I just want to last point, James. It might sound stupid, but I think it's really important to have these conversations. I know Rob does it a lot. Like, it just seems like an online debate, but I feel like both of us, Garrett and Corbin, I appreciate you coming here because, like, even though I don't debate, we don't always change your mind. I think you guys are going to ask more questions about this and kind of look at it through a more of an inquisitive lens. So I think that's why it's important to have these conversations because definitely your viewpoints have changed a little bit since before it started. So I appreciate you guys being here and doing this.
I think my viewpoint's been more or less the same throughout the whole duration of the debate, but you guys have brought up more examples that I'm going to go.
You've had some epiphanies. You've had some epiphanies, Corbin. Let's not act like you haven't learned anything tonight.
No, I think our opinions haven't really
new
changed. We're
information.
just
Well,
willing to
Garrett, you've had a
consider
lot
new
of epiphanies
information.
too. I was seeing your face. You were lighting up like a light bulb after Rob was saying a lot of stuff. So,
Okay.
listen, you guys can lie, and that's
The
what your
halo
side
around
does.
his head.
You
I
guys can
think the
lie and
fireplace in your
obfuscate.
background is shining on your eyes.
You guys can lie all you want. I saw it, and I can go back clip it, and I'll tell you when you had the epiphanies, and you guys can say, Alex, are you clairvoyant? I'm going to say, no, I have eyes, I can see. So thank you guys for learning so much. I really appreciate schooling you guys.
Yeah, and thank you for coming on and being such an thank you for coming on and
putting up
being a very
being
easy
such
target.
a what, Corbin? Being such a what?
I was gonna say thank you for coming on and being an easy target. Yeah, Rob was a little more of a challenge, but you made it a little bit
easy
easier.
target. See, Rob, this is the thing,
you.
Rob. When he does have to say you're a more hardcore debater because Rob is more intense. But Corbin, I look at you and I feel sorry for you. So when I come here, I'm not as mean as Rob. Rob's the bad cop. I'm the good cop. So and same with you, Garrett. I look at you. You can't work a computer trying to use your phone. I have empathy for you guys. So I don't want to come here and hurt you.
My computer
Rob
sucks.
does all the heavy
That's
lifting.
the problem.
No, I do legitimately thank you guys for coming out and having the conversation with me. You guys have like a trillionth of the platform that me or Garet do. So I legitimately thank you for taking.
And you guys will get some followers too from this. That'll be good.
Yeah.
Okay.
This has been fun. You guys,
it has been fun.
Thank you for all of our guests. Thank you very much for our guests. I appreciated your guys' spirited, aggressive. It was a very good debate. Folks, check out our guests linked in the description box. What are you waiting for? You can hear more by clicking on their links right now. And also, click on the link in the description box for DebateCon 6. Get your tickets. You don't want to miss it. Folks, it's going to be huge. Nashville, Tennessee, November 15th and 16th. Come meet Rob. Look at him. Look, you could see that beard in person. But I want to say, folks, thank you for watching. Huge thanks to our guests. They are the debaters of the lifeblood of the channel. Check out their links. With that, we're going to wrap up. Folks, I will be back in a moment to say, well, actually, what I'm going to do is because the stream is just crashing, I'm going to say goodbye right now. So thank you, folks, for tuning in. I won't have a post-credit show tonight. But I want to say thank you, folks, and we'll see you at the next debate, which is tomorrow.
All right, sounds
Thanks,
good.
guys.
Take it easy, everyone.
Thank you.
Take it easy.
Thanks for having
Take
me.
it easy.
Take
Thanks for
care.
coming.
Have a good night.
Thanks.
All right, guys, that was fun. Let me see if I can make this. Now my OBS was crashing the whole time. Let's see if I go to transform real quick. Fit the screen. Okay. Babe, that was insane, that debate. And my camera quality's all crap. It's like, it just kept going in and out. And now I can just tell right now it's not the right quality. It's all.
That was hilarious.
Which was hilarious? Which part?
This is how you were talking.
What was I talking like?
I don't know, you're just like, then you believe in DEI. Then you, I don't know, it's just funny what you were saying. Or you don't believe in DEI. You don't, I don't know, it's just funny how you were saying it.
Damn, I was saying a lot of stuff. What's the chat saying? Is the chat even here? What's up, guys? Adios, peace, dude. Where are those noodles, babe?
I don't know.
Back up. I know, I missed the cats. Oh, look at his chest here. This is what a man looks like. All right, guys, big news coming. We only got about 6 episodes left of Primetime with Alex Stein. It's so sad. I'm going to be so sad. But I got something cooking, so be on the lookout for that. I know I don't sound super excited about it, but I'm just kind of sad. I like the Blaze. But regardless, people on a blimp, we're going to freaking overcome every obstacle. That's life, and life's not supposed to be easy. You're supposed to have challenging times, and getting through those times make you stronger for the future challenges. So I've had challenges in the past, so I'll be okay. I'll be able to handle this challenge. All right, guys, I love you. We're going to end the stream. We're having technical difficulties. We're going to get everything fixed. I love you guys. Thank you for watching, guys. Let's see.